everyone, to another special episode of The Buck Stops Here. And this is a series where we're looking at the Basketball Hall of Fame nominees. And specifically, we're looking at the preliminary list that is made public, who the group can vote on. And my cohort and I, well, I'm Kirk Buchner. I run NotInHallOfFame.com, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame, the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and the United States Athletics Hall of Fame. And with me is Vinny Lospinuso, the host. Actually, you're really the host of the show that you do on your own. But he makes the Hall of Fame case for. I'm just your sounding board there on that. So we've decided that we're just going to give a little bit more information than the actual Hoop Hall does. We'll give nothing.
Yeah.
So this is our second of our series.
I'm happy they listed them well, there's several reasons, but the main reason I have is like they just list the names and that's it. So like if you don't know who these people are, you're like, who's this person? Who's that person? Well, fortunately for you and the people listening or watching this, I know who these people are, and I want to tell you about some of them.
And do not judge Mr. Lospinuso by his youth. I will put his historical sports knowledge against anyone out there.
I appreciate that.
Well, I mean it. So we've got so we're gonna do this cold beer in hand, of course, because I'm Canadian. That's what I do. We've got four new names that we're gonna look at, and we're gonna start off the same way we did last time on the international thing. So we're gonna start off with Andrew Gaze. If you know him, if you're watching this for the first time, you might remember him as a cup of coffee guy with the Spurs and I believe the Cavaliers at one point. Do I have that right? I think
no, he was with the Bullets in '94.
Oh, the Bullets. Sorry, I'm looking at a different note. But yeah, but either way, he didn't do that much in the NBA. That's okay. He's an international nominee, and when you think of Australian ball players, you're thinking of Ben Simmons. Like, we're not talking about the negative of Ben Simmons, but maybe Andrew Bogut. There's a lot of phenomenal female players who have come out of the land.
Lauren Jackson comes to mind usually for that.
Absolutely. Current inductee, I believe, was it last year or 2 years ago? I can't recall.
It was 2 years ago, I believe. 2021.
Yeah. So we have a gentleman here who was a 22-year vet of the National Basketball League in Australia, all of which with the Melbourne Tigers. Oh, so I'm looking at this here. Like, holy crap, 7-time MVP, 14-time scoring champion. Collegially, I mean, he played at Seton Hall.
He took him to the Final Four.
Oh, okay. I missed that. All right. So then we also have to add those accomplishments because that is something that the Hall looks at overall. I mean, technically, it's in the international category. This doesn't hurt him, of course. 15-time first-team player, but he also played a bit in Europe. We mentioned the NBA, but in Europe, he made history as the first Aussie to play in a European league. That was in Italy in the second tier, but he also played in the Greek league. Internationally, he represented Australia a long, long time. Now, Australia wasn't the power that they want. Maybe not a power, but they weren't the team that we think of them now internationally. Fair to say?
Oh, yeah. But if you look at even then, who was the one running the show? It was Andrew Gaze. Andrew Gaze was the reason why Australia was always competitive. In fact, in the year 2000 in particular, where he actually carried the flag for them that year, he was the leading scorer points per game for the entire Olympics that year.
Yeah, the 2000.
And that's regardless of.
Was that in Sydney that year? I think.
Yes, it was in Sydney.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was the main guy that was leading it for them.
Third all time in points in FIBA international competition, which the other people ahead of him are Oscar Schmidt of Brazil and Luis Scola of Argentina. So
the Scola should make it eventually.
I would think so. So this is a very solid candidate.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Andrew Gaze guy. Like, people could debate, who's the greatest of all time? Is it Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Bill Russell, Kareem, Will? No. In Australia, everyone says the exact same name. Andrew Gaze is the greatest basketball player in the history of Australia. Not Ben Simmons, not Andrew Bogut. Andrew Gaze is where the buck starts and ends when it comes to the greatest player. He is by far the greatest player in Australia's history. In fact, he was so dominant. They had an award called the NBL Most Efficient Player, but they had to retire it because the only one winning it was Andrew Gaze, because he led the league in efficiency 8 times in a row from 1990 to 1997.
How did they calculate the efficiency? The same way they do like in Basketball Reference with the PER? Or How did they come up with that?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but either way, the fact of the matter is they had an award that lasted 8 years and they had to retire because the only one winning it was Andrew Gaze.
I love it when I sometimes will look at the old, well, not old, but I'll look at players who are no longer active. And when you see, okay, Edgar Martinez won the Edgar Martinez Award, which obviously he didn't win it when it was named that, but still, I find that fascinating.
Yeah, he was also a Gaze medalist 6 times, which was actually named after his father, Lindsay Gaze, who was the first Australian to make the Basketball Hall of Fame, which he did it, I believe, in I think 2015. Yeah, he's also, like his son, the only two Australians to be part of the FIBA Hall of Fame. So he's
He
got
got
that going
in.
for him.
When did he get in? He got in a long time ago in the FIBA Hall, didn't he?
Lindsay Gaze.
Well, Andrew.
Andrew made the FIBA Hall of Fame. I'm not sure when he made the FIBA Hall of Fame. I know he was named one of the 50 greatest players in 91. As for the FIBA Hall of Fame, I'm checking right here when he made that.
Which is, while you're doing that, I mean, that's still a pretty big deal to be in the top 50.
2013. He made it. He made it in 2013.
And became quite a coach.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Sydney Kings were pretty good under him. He also was with the Melbourne Tigers themselves, which was the same team he coached.
Mhm.
And like, just when you think of basketball in Australia, like I said, it begins and ends with Andrew Gaze. Like, I've always been big on Andrew Gaze, and I always will be big on Andrew Gaze, even if / when he does make the Hall of Fame. I'll always be a big Andrew Gaze guy.
All right, when he gets in, we'll put a shrimp on the Barbie. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
Well, it'd be more like you. I think it'd be better to say that he would put some nice kangaroo on the Barbie, have it in a meat pie while listening to, I don't know, the Wiggles at the Opera House, I guess.
They eat kangaroo?
Yeah, they do. There's actually twice as many kangaroo than people over there. They actually do need to kill some of them because they're considered a pest.
Okay, I'm not a vegan, but that's still something I didn't need to know.
And now you do.
Now I do. There you go.
Be
Vic,
like an American eating a bald eagle.
what's that?
It'd be like an American that eats a bald eagle. It just feels kind of weird.
Yeah, with the koala chaser if you're an Aussie, I guess.
Well, I don't know if they eat koalas, but they eat kangaroo though.
I don't know. I don't want to insult the fine people down under. Which I guess if you're down under, to us, to them, we're down upper, up downer. I don't know. Let's move on to a
Upside
veteran.
down.
There you go. Vic Bubas. Bubas. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. A forgotten person in the legend that is Duke basketball.
Yeah. Like Vic Bubas is someone who people do not talk about in terms of his
Not at all.
impact
They
at
should.
all. Yeah. They should. I mean, he played at Illinois for a few years and was NC State as a guard. And he was also a coach, an assistant at NC State for almost a decade.
Yeah,
For a
right
decade, he
after
was a head coach at Duke.
yeah, right after he stopped playing, which was 51, I saw. So in
Mhm.
59, he takes over Duke, and he only had it for 11 years, or 10 or 11, but had a record of,
Um,
well, 59 to 69. I guess it would be, 10 because I'm not sure because of the carryover 59 and 60. Either way, 10 or 11 years, a record of 213 and 47. Obviously, that's pretty damn good.
I'd
Three-time
say
coach,
so.
yeah, three-time ACC Coach of the Year, but more importantly, three Final Fours.
Yeah, the first 3 Final Fours from Duke. I mean, a lot of people just think Mike Krzyzewski, and he's a legendary coach. Don't get me wrong, he is, and I'm not taking anything against him.
No, of course
But
not.
Vic Bubas was the one that took them to three different Final Fours and were the runner-ups in 1964. So they didn't win a championship, but they made it very close. They made it to 3 Final Fours, which, if I recall, I'm looking at like Final Four appearances by head coach. These are all the head coaches that have been to 3 Final Fours. Fog Allen in the Hall of Fame already. Harry Combs, he's not in the Hall just yet. Um, Joe Hall, he's in the College Hall of Fame, but not regular Hall of Fame. Ben Howland from UCLA, he just retired. He's not in yet, obviously. But Vic Bubas has something that they don't. All these guys, he has something that they don't have. He was the head of the ACC for a long time. He was the first ever commissioner of the Sun, not the ACC, the Sun Belt Conference. Why was
Yeah.
in the ACC?
Yeah, also too, I mean, like I think if he had not gone into administration so early in his life, because he wasn't forced out in 59 or 69,
No.
sorry. He basically took a promotion.
Mhm.
So he was working as like in administration to, and then like you said, with the Sun Belt, he stays a little bit longer or wins one more game. And we know obviously when one more game in the finals. We're not having this discussion now. There's a very good chance he's already in the Hall of Fame or the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. We should be very specific on that.
I
Uh,
think he probably would be. He's in the
yeah,
College Basketball Hall of Fame. He's in the Indiana
yeah.
Basketball Hall of Fame. And he's in the North Carolina Sports Hall of Fame. But, so far he's not in there. I mean, I wonder if Duke has pushed him behind the scenes because I have no idea if they have.
Mhm.
Um, I would hope they have, especially as he was the guy that brought them to their first three Final Fours.
Well,
But you never,
he's long passed away, I believe. What one
yeah.
thing I
But
found super interesting about him that I didn't know was it's kind of funny that we talk about scouting. I'm going to be doing a few mock drafts in the NFL with a few people that we know mutually, just to have some fun with that, which I've never really done before. But advanced scouting and scouting is obviously such a big deal. Like you and I have had many conversations about Gil Brandt, some of the work he did, Bill Nunn. This obviously we're talking about football, but back in the '60s, what's your scouting? All right, well, what did
not really
I
much. It's
write
more
about
like
in the paper? You
yeah.
know,
But he was the guy that pioneered recruiting.
right?
That like all the recruiting you see today, that happened because of Vic Bubas. He was the one that I mean, Dean Smith, legendary coach. We all know how he is.
Mhm.
He credits Vic Bubas for teaching them how to recruit. Like all these legendary coaches like Krzyzewski or Smith or Lute Olson, so on and so forth. All these legendary coaches would not be what they were if it was not for what Vic Bubas has done. Like that's how significant he is. Like he was someone who really transformed the way that college basketball is to the day.
Yeah, I mean,
Plain and
looking at
simple.
other local newspapers for the time, well, why didn't anyone think of it? Well, no one did. And so he was an outside of the box thinker for that sort of thing. So, and North Carolina is a hotbed and has been then, still is now, of just excellent basketball players. And he was going to do everything he could to get.
Credit a lot.
Go ahead.
I don't think Duke would be what it is today if it was not for Bubas. In fact, not only that, his winning percentage, we're talking about him a coach, his winning percentage was 761, and that's 10th all time for the history of NCAA coaches.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who the nine above him are, but when you're
I
top 10 in terms of
yeah.
percentage, just everything about him just says Hall of Famer.
I forgot to ask you for Gaze, and I'll do this with Bubas because we did that in our first series. What is Vinny's want and what is Vinny's prediction in terms of
Uh,
for
Gaze is one of my
Gaze? Yeah.
most wanted, period, for
Okay.
basketball.
So a 10?
But so I probably say 10. But in terms of likelihood, like it's only one, so I'm not really sure how feasible it is. And as for Booba's, man, there's so many deserving contributors, man. There's so many
Hard.
deserving
It's
contributors.
so hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
But what's your want
it's
though
so
on it?
I'd say he's like a 8 maybe
Really?
or
Okay.
9.
All
It's
right.
high, but not that high.
One that we're gonna go to the modern section, and one that I find the backstory fascinating, only if there is a backstory on this at all.
There is one.
Oh, there is one. You probably know it. Okay.
Yes, there is. I actually spoke to Matt Zeisen. He's one of the curators at the Basketball Hall of Fame. He told me that the reason why Walter Davis and Penny Hardaway they updated to Adam is because they
Before you
forgot
do
to add
that,
those two.
yeah, but before you do that, just so people are aware, the Hoop Hall put out their list of candidates, and 5 days later, they did an amendment where they added Penny Hardaway and Walter Davis. So you sent me that message, and I said back, well, I guess somebody must have said something to him, and I guess you've got some insider info on that. So far away.
Yeah, Penny Hardaway. The reason why Penny it took so long for him and Walter Davis, I'll talk to Walter Davis in a later time. The reason why it took so long for them to make it is a lot of people don't realize this, but you actually need to nominate them via email to be on the Hall of Fame itself. Like, it wasn't because they had a bias against Penny Hardaway. It's
He's
because
been
no
here
one.
before.
Hmm?
Penny's been here before.
I don't think he
I
has.
think he has.
Or
I
well, I
could
know
be
that Walter
wrong, but
Davis wasn't.
okay. Well, that I'm not sure, but I think Penny, whether he is or isn't, either way, that's some good information that I didn't know. So you have to be nominated by whom? Like a certain group?
Anyone. You could
Anyone?
be a friend, anyone. Like, the reason why the preliminary list for football was so gargantuan compared to previous years is because I was the one who decided to email them so many more
But
names
they
to put
didn't
on
take
it.
all your suggestions. So somebody's sort of playing roadblock.
Yeah, but they did accept those. But for this one, like Walter Davis, for instance, made it because he died recently and his family decided to email them his name.
Okay.
That's that.
What about
That's how it
Penny?
happened. Well, as for Penny, I think that was another situation where like a Magic fan or something sent it to them.
Okay. All right, so that's interesting. So with Penny Hardaway, I've got him ranked on the not in Hall of Fame list of basketball players to consider. I'm personally on the fence here. I don't know what your opinion is on this. We've never actually spoken about Penny Hardaway before. Collegiately, we're looking at a very good player, two-time Greater Midwest Player of the Year when he was playing it with the Memphis Tigers. Third overall pick in the same draft where Chris Webber went number one, and they flipped that along with a few other picks. Hardaway really wanted to play with Shaq, and for a brief period of time in the mid '90s, which is fascinating considering Orlando was just only created in the mid '90s or in the early
Mhm.
'90s. The Orlando Magic were, I mean, I remember I wasn't a kid, I would have been in my early 20s. You weren't even born yet. Uh, a shit ton of Magic jerseys by, with O'Neal or Hardaway. Hardaway, and I remember because I lived through this. At one point, you could argue that he was in the top three of most recognized players.
Mhm.
He had more commercials at one point. I mean, he was in that Little Penny thing with Spike
Yeah,
Lee.
Chris Rock. Chris Rock was played voiced Little Penny.
Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so he was very much part of the basketball zeitgeist in terms of recognition. He did have a first team All NBA, but that year
Two, two,
was it two? Okay, but he never
two,
finished.
95 and 96.
Okay, but he never finished in and here's where I struggle with his candidacy because back then, I say back then, they're only changing it this year. They were giving first team, second teams based purely on position. They're going to change that now. So Penny was never top five MVP guy, never, never close.
Yeah.
And was he at one point the best shooting guard for maybe a 2 year period? I mean, the voters thought so. I don't know, but he had that period. But then injuries caught up with him really quick.
Yeah.
So he's not in the top 100 in any significant category. Never top five guy, although first team all NBA would say otherwise. But you get where I'm sort of coming with that.
Of
I wouldn't
course.
have a problem though if Hardaway gets in, but am I missing something? Like you wanted to talk about him, so I'm curious your thoughts.
Yeah, you're missing a few things. Okay.
It's,
First off, I understand that there's many ways you could take a Hall of Fame. I look at it from every single angle, not just from an athletic perspective or even an impact perspective or even a significant cultural perspective. But even as much as people want to talk about, achievement, there's a word in it that people need to focus on too. Fame. You can make a really serious argument that Penny Hardaway was a top five or even top three most important basketball player of the 90s. Because Penny Hardaway was literally everywhere. With Shaq and Penny, especially as the
kind of
Magic.
open with that. I just want to point out, but yes.
Yeah. He was very, very, very significant.
Mhm.
And he was also someone who mentioned the all NBA first teams. There's only three players in NBA history that either, whether they're eligible or not, that have had two or more all NBA first teams and not in the Hall of Fame. Max Zapslovsky, who we've talked about before,
Mhm.
Alex Groza, Lou Groza's brother. He's an interesting case because he was banned at the time, but maybe he's eligible now. I'm not sure. And Penny Hardaway. So he's one of only three people to say that they have two or more, and they're not in the Hall of Fame. Not only that, when he was at Memphis, when he went to Memphis, he was considered one of the very, very best players in the NBA, not the NBA, in college, period. He was a consensus All-American in
Mhm.
1983. He was also a first team parade All-American and the Midwest Player of the Year 92, 93. And he's back in Memphis right now. And he's also a pretty good coach for them at the moment, too. In fact, the Memphis Tigers have been to, a couple NCAA tournament appearances and went to the round of 32 in 2022. So he's a good coach now. He also, in that time in the 90s, he was one of the superstars. But the issue is that in the later 10, he was essentially a role player because, like you said, injuries really caught up to him.
Right.
But you got to admit, during the 90s, he was a very significantly
I
iconic
lived it.
player.
I lived it. I remember
Mhm.
very well.
Yeah, like you got to admit that that plays a big part. I think of him as like a Grant Hill light in a sense.
That's a
I'm
very
just
good
looking at this is
comparison.
this is the first ever year he was nominated to the Hall of Fame. So I looked this up. This is the first ever year I checked.
Okay, so you
Um,
never reached this stage before. I could have
Never.
sworn you
This is the
had, but
first
okay,
time.
I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Won't be the last time I'm ever wrong on something.
Okay.
Uh, so same question. What's your want and what's your thought or
My
prediction?
personal thoughts on whether or not he's deserving, I think he definitely has a case. Because even though it was a relatively short peak, that peak was very, very big. However, in terms of actual want for the Hall of Fame, and there's other moderns on here I'd rather have instead. I mean,
All right,
you
all right.
have Vince Carter on here, you have Michael Cooper on here, you have Marquise
Same here.
Johnson, you have Dick Motta, you have Buck. Well, you have Sean Marion's another one, like Bill
Mhm.
Lambier is also another one. Like there's several other names I'd rather have over Penny Hardaway. And that's no disrespect to Penny Hardaway.
Not
It's
at
just
all.
that
It's a cue.
he's lower on the list.
No, that sounds fair. Now, the fourth one, Vin, you're going to have to help me out a lot because I'll admit, and I don't mind admitting things. If I don't know somebody, I don't know somebody. Lambert Will is a fascinating name because I never heard of the guy. However, I think you're going to tell me why there's a very good chance we'd be talking about the Will Basketball Hall of Fame instead of the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And I'm going to pretty much just I've sort of been throwing out a bunch of stuff initially. I'm not going to say anything here. Go. Who is
Okay,
Lambert?
Lambert Will is someone who they believe, many people actually believe, was the real creator of basketball because back when he was younger at the local YMCA, he tossed cabbages into peach baskets in a root cellar at a general store.
Mhm. When you say
So
younger,
yeah,
from what I read, at age 16.
yeah, he was 16 years old. I know that back in the 50s there was a debate between Naismith and Will, and there are a lot of supporters of Will. I also know that he was someone who helped create the rim itself for the basketball. I know that there was also a book recently in 2022 called Naismith Basketball Stolen Legacy, which is written by Canadian historians George and Daryl Fosty and Brian Carroll, who's a researcher in America.
Oh,
And there's even photos that date back to
yes.
1891, and 1893 that showed the Herkimer basketball team, which he created, that debuted before um, Naismith. So,
If I could, that book, and I discovered it just only yesterday. If anyone wants to take a look at it, it's called Naismith, but the myth is spelled Myth. If anyone sort of like wants to take a look at, I actually want to get that book because I'm very fascinated about that. What I wonder, and obviously you've done far more research on this. I said I was going to keep quiet, and I never do. Ask my wife about that. Do you think that because he was only 16, so he comes up with this one idea, James sees this and just goes, "Huh, like what happened to Lambert after this? Like I can't find anything."
Lambert, there's not really as much with him that I find. I could also be very wrong. But I will say this, it's not like the Hall of Fame is trying to blacklist him, because if that was the case, I don't think Lambert Well would even be on this list in the first place. But
Of course, yeah.
here he is.
It's I I want to learn more about that because it's just a lot of he said from people trying to deduce everything they can just from pictures and old newspaper clippings.
They're pretty legitimate newspaper clippings, though.
No, I know, but it's still, and like neither are alive to even sort of like defend said position.
No, it's usually from a lot of old newspapers and everything else.
Mhm. I don't know. I mean, like it's certainly an interesting case. I think it'll be a hard one for him to get in, though, based on who
Oh, yeah,
was
there's
up there.
also the Herkimer Nine Foundation, which is a group of people that are trying to right the wrong with it.
Mhm.
So
If it
maybe
is
I can
wrong, to
try
be
to see,
fair.
I'll see if I can contact them in the
Yeah.
future because it's in Herkimer, New York. It's upstate, so I'm gonna have to
Wait, I
contact
didn't ask.
them.
So Lambert Will was based where?
Um, uh, Herkimer, New York,
Where's that? I'm not familiar with that city or town.
upstate. It's specifically I'm looking at right
I
here.
figured you're a New York guy, so I thought you might know that.
Yeah, but
My bad.
it's by the Mohawk River in upstate New York. It's like dab in the center of upstate.
Okay, so like
I may be from New York, but many people here don't really associate us with up there. It's almost a different state.
you're still a New Yorker. I am not.
Indeed, I am.
Yes, I've only gone to a few Bills games. That's about it.
Yes.
Okay, so these are a really good four. I think I'm looking forward to when we do a few more with this. If you really enjoyed this series, check out a lot of the shows that Vinny has done for us, where Vinny has made some very fun Hall of Fame cases for. Most recently, actually, this one's just gone up. The George Steinbrenner one has gone up, which I'm
And
sure.
also, the James A. R. Kinney one came up
Yeah,
too, if I'm
James,
not.
yeah, that one came up. So that one's a fascinating one too. If you want to sort of like understand the history of black hockey, and you're thinking like, what are you talking about? No, it did not begin with Jerome Iginla. It began way before that,
Mhm.
and there's a fascinating backstory behind that. And I think my favorite part too, Vin, is when you're doing all this stuff. A lot of people who are related to these individuals are finding this stuff out, and it's getting noticed.
Yeah,
All right,
I'm
so
happy they are too.
they are, yeah, for sure. So with that, wherever you are, wherever you may be, stay safe, everybody.